Hey, how's it going? So on the left here, I've got a web page, a real web page being served by a web server. Now it's a simple web page, but it is a web page. Here I have my DevTools open. You can see that I'm getting back a web page. And on the right here, I have an HTTP server, but I'm not using the HTTP package. I'm using the net package because I'm using Node's TCP package to build my own HTTP server. Now, when I say build my own HTTP server, it's a very minimal, brittle, simple HTTP server, but it's enough for Chrome to look at this and go, yeah, okay, good enough. Yes, I will treat this as a web page. So in this video, we're going to start off very simple with this code, and then we're going to get a little bit more complicated. If you are an expert in HTTP and TCP, you're going to recognize that there's a lot that I'm skipping over for this video. Sorry, but look how short this video is. Okay, so what do we have here? This code right here is going to produce an HTTP response that the browser is okay with and will render this. So you can see it's going to return a response like this with the content type, right? This combined is called the headers, and then we're going to have the body. And in fact, if I go into my Chrome DevTools, I can go look at it here. So I have headers, right? I have response headers and request headers. And here are my response headers. These are exactly what I'm setting. We'll talk about that soon. And here's the request headers. Let's look at them raw though. So looking at these raw, this is my response, right? These are the headers from it. And this is the request headers. So you can see Chrome is sending a lot of request headers. My server is very simple. It has no idea what any of these things mean because I implemented it and I'm not dealing with any of the security stuff, any of the host stuff, any of the encoding stuff. This server is purpose-built to serve this web page from Chrome. I should mention all this code is available in the description on my GitHub. We're currently in the file baby HTTP, but we're going to get into my first HTTP soon. This is what we have here. These are the headers, and we're telling it it's text HTML char set UTF-8. Okay, great. What happens if I change this to char UTF-9? Okay, and I'm going to reload the web page. All of a sudden, it can't figure out what that emoji is, right? So I've got to tell it, no, this is UTF-8. It goes UTF-8. Great. I know exactly how to deal with that. Because remember, it's just getting bytes and it's trying to figure out what do these bytes mean. Okay, but now we're going to get rid of the emoji and we're going to get rid of the header where we're telling it the content type. Okay, so now we've just got this. So we're just saying HTTP and then we're giving the body back. Ready? Let's see what happens here. Still works. Still works. So if you look at the header here, okay, all I'm telling it is this and I'm passing in this string. Chrome has looked at this and gone, you haven't told me what this is. I'm looking at this. I'm seeing angle brackets. Okay, this is probably HTTP. Okay, great. Let's throw in an extra angle bracket here. So now it's mangled HTTP. I'm going to save it. Boom. Okay, now what is it? It's just text. So Chrome is just saying, okay, I don't know what this is. I'm going to treat it just like text. We'll put this back. Okay, great. Let's put the content type back. So we've got our content type back with our header. Okay, everything's good. Now let's throw in the extra angle bracket. So now this time we're telling it it's HTML, but it's mangled. What will happen? Still treats it like HTML because we've told it explicitly, this is HTML. Here is the angle bracket. So it goes, okay, this must just be text because you're throwing it in here. It's actually this one, doesn't matter. Okay, you're following so far, great. So we have /r/n. What is happening here? So this is the way of separating every line. Now, if you've done some coding before, you've probably put like a /n to separate a line, but here we're doing /r/n. Why? Why do we have to do this? Okay, we're going to go over to MDN. You've probably heard of CRLF before, right? So this is CR and LF, that's /r/n. CR is carriage return, LF is line feed. And this goes back to when computers were using teletypes, where you actually had like a print head that would go across like a typewriter, and then you would have to return the carriage and then do a line feed. And when they were deciding on the HTTP protocol, they decided that /r/n, that's how we're going to make a new line. Okay, so we have /r/n, that's how we do a new line. But if I put the two of them in a row, that's how you get an empty line. And that's how you tell it, okay, the headers are done. Now it's time to move on to the body. Okay, so what do we have here? Now this is a little bit more complicated. Look at this web page. So I wanted to make this web page just look a little bit fancy, just a little bit fancy, just so you can realize that like none of the fanciness has anything to do with the backend. That's all front end stuff. When I say fancy, I just mean like, look, I've got a hover effect, right? There's a bit of a gradient going on in the background. I'm using different font weights, right? And I've even got post requests happening asynchronously. and some more stuff. I've actually included the entire contents of the web server in the web page itself. We'll get into that in a little bit. But this web page is not, let's just say it's not trivial. It's not the smallest web page in the world. But again, it's just being served by TCP because, and I'm doing the HTTP protocol, obviously, right? But Chrome doesn't care, right? Once you get it into the browser, doesn't matter. So you can have like the worst web server in the world. And this is definitely a strong contender for worst web server in the world. Never, ever put something like this in production. But once you get into the browser, it works. Also, the font I'm using is IBM Plex Mono. It's a very beautiful font. The editor I'm using is NeoVim. The color scheme I'm using is Capuchin Frappe. And this is Node. Okay, so I'm going to refresh the page and just take a look at the network traffic before we actually get into the code here. So I have a local host call, right? So this is me asking for HTTP. If we can look at the request headers, let's look at them raw. This is what Chrome is sending over, okay? It's saying, great, I'm using HTTP 1.1. I'm expecting HTML or something like HTML, maybe an image, who knows? I accept all these things. And then my web server, right, is saying, cool, I'm doing HTTP 1.0, right? Like I'm pretty old school, and this is UTF-8. That's all I'm doing, right? So I'm not doing any of the more complicated stuff. This I don't even think meets the full HTTP spec, but it's good enough for Chrome. Inside my HTML, I make reference to an image, right? So then the browser makes another request for this image. I drew this image myself. Isn't it beautiful? It's not very good. Also, the browser is asking for a favicon. So it's getting a favicon. If you look carefully, you'll realize these are the same image because you'll see how it works in my router. Okay, so let's look at the response headers for the image. Okay, it is image SVG XML. And for the favicon, exactly the same because it's the exact same response. Okay, so going back to the initial call for HTML, this is what they are asking for. They're saying get me /HTTP. Okay. So the first thing I do is I create a TCP server. That's what the browser is connecting to. Now, this TCP server speaks HTTP, so the browser's happy. Kind of speaks HTTP, not very well. I get a connection from the browser, and then I console log out some stuff on close. I'll show you that in a second. But here's the important thing here. I set up all these variables: request data, method, path, protocol, request headers, request header length, and then I start reading the TCP stream. So the client is sending in this data, and it's up to me to figure out, is this an HTTP response I can deal with or not? So I start with a 408 on the socket, right? So I'm reading chunks of data out of the socket, the TCP connection socket, and I'm checking to see, do I have /r/n/r/n? If I have that, that means my headers are done. If I don't have that, it means my headers aren't done. Why are headers so important? Because once I have the headers, then I can figure out what kind of request is this and what am I even supposed to be doing? Assuming the headers have come in properly. And again, just want to show you the headers again really quickly, just so you have a sense of what we're talking about here, right? So request headers, right? We're going to look at them. This is them nice and fancy in the dev tools, but like this is what is being sent over, right? After each line, picture a /r/n. I'm reading this whole thing. And then when I get to the end, there's going to be /r/n/r/n. Okay, great. That means the headers are all done. At that point, I can start looking at the headers and figure out like, what is this thing? So now that I know I have the header data, I'm just going to do some JavaScript, right? I'm going to split it apart. I'm going to get the length of the header data. That's important for later. And then I'm going to split the headers into basically just a JavaScript object, right? So key value, key value, key value. And here, the very first line, I'm going to split it into the method, path, and protocol. So the method, it's a GET request, right? You've seen this before, GET request. The path, /, right? It's the root. And then the protocol, HTTP 1.1. Now, protocol, do I ever make reference to this? Nope, because my server doesn't care. It doesn't care what the protocol is. It better be HTTP 1.0 or 1.1. Otherwise, this isn't going to work. The goal isn't to build a great HTTP server. It's just to do enough that I can make a response. If I get to this point, that means I've been able to parse a request and I can print it out. So now at this point, I know the URL, right? Is it going to be /? Is it going to be favicon.ico? I also know the method. Is it a GET request? Is it a POST request? So at this point, it's time for me to start building my router. If the request method is a GET, I'm going to make the assumption that there is absolutely no body. Now, some people say that a request, HTTP request GET can have a body. Other people say it should never have a body. I'm going to assume it's not going to have a body, and that will be true here. So I say, okay, is the method GET? Is the path slash? Great. I'm sending out my homepage. And what is my homepage? It's just strings. I start off with my headers right here saying, okay, this is it. Here's my empty line. And then I do a big HTML string, right, with the fancy interpolation. Not going to walk you through the entire thing. You can read it if you're interested. It's just HTML, nothing fancy. Okay, so I say nothing fancy, but there is one thing. I have the escaped content. So what I'm doing is I'm getting the contents of this file, right? This file that I'm looking at here in Vim. I'm getting the contents of this file and I'm putting it into the HTML. So if you're looking at this web page and you say, see the code that serves this site, you click it. This is the code that serves this site. So this is all this code right here. Now, some things aren't going to work quite right because I'm using like a nerd font and that stuff's not going to make it across because, well, it does make it across, but Chrome has no idea what it is, right? But the emoji made it across. That's great because it's UTF-8. So that looks okay. The only special thing I have to do there is I have to replace some of the angle brackets and ampersand with the HTML, what's the name for them, entities. Otherwise, it'll break my HTML. I'll have HTML inside HTML, it'll fall apart. So it's just getting replaced. Okay, included in this HTML, again, big string, is I even have some JavaScript, and we're gonna look at that JavaScript in a little bit. But it's just in a big string, and I'm sending it back to the front end. Down here, I join everything with the carriage return line feed so that the browser can process it properly. And then I write it into the socket, and I end the socket, and we're done. If I was doing a more modern HTTP protocol, I would probably try and reuse this socket, but I'm not doing that. Actually, can you just come in for 1 second? Yeah. Please never put anything like this in production. This is ridiculous, okay? But it's kind of fun. Okay, continuing on. Now we've got a favicon or an image. So if the path is, remember, still we're looking for a GET. If it's a favicon or an image, okay, great, here we are. It's all in line. I drew this in some website. I copied the SVG XML here and I put it in there. I didn't do a good job. It looks terrible, but that's how you get the favicon, and that's how you get this thing that is supposed to be that logo thing. And the logo is Korean, but it's also kind of my name. It's a thing. Now, if we get this far, we know that it can no longer be a GET request. So now I'm looking for something really important because now I'm looking at a POST request and I care about the content length. Okay, so looking at the headers for the GET request, there is no header called content length, but I'm going to make a POST request right now. So I have this button here that when you click, it makes a POST request. Okay, it makes a POST request. It does something that we can get into if I don't forget. But if we look at the headers now for this one, the request headers, it has the content length. The content length is the length in bytes of the body, not the entire request of the body. So it's saying how long in bytes is the body. There are a few different ways that you can tell the client or server how long the body of the payload is. This is a fairly common one. And it's important because on the other side of the stream, I need to know when should I stop expecting data. And because this is a POST request with a body, I can check, look, I've got a payload. And I can view the source of the payload. This is the source of the payload. And it's 33 characters. Okay, it doesn't look like it's 33 characters, right? It certainly doesn't. And it's not 33 characters. So what I'm going to show you here, I'm just grabbing the payload that I've taken, right? And I'm going to select it and I'm going to start going across it here. So if you look in the bottom right down here, okay, you can see I'm on line 12 and I'm at what position I'm at. So I'm selecting this thing, right? So you can see how many characters that I'm at. So far I'm at 25 characters, 26, 27, 28, but here it says 31. 32, 33. So what this is telling me is actually you're on column 30, but there are 33 bytes of data, right? So there we go, 33 bytes of data. Why? It's because of this friendly person here. So all these other characters are ASCII characters. They're 1 byte, but this person is this clown person. It's a clown. It's a person. It's multi-byte. So you can't just count the number of characters and say, okay, well, that's the payload length. It's the number of bytes. And remember, at the TCP layer, it doesn't know anything about, UTF-8, right? It's just reading bytes. It's up to me to figure out, okay, what are these bytes? Because I'm the HTTP layer. I am. Okay, the client can send over a few different messages here, right? Some of these have no special character. This is just pure ASCII. Some of these have characters that require the backend to know that they are special characters, that this is UTF-8. But regardless, I'm just sending messages over and I'm getting a response. I look at the content length and I go, okay, great, I've found this content length. If I can't find the content length, then I'm going to say that's an HTTP 400. Again, this is me doing that, right? Like I'm the one saying like, this is the protocol, right? Like this is what you're supposed to be doing, Chrome. You have to send me that. And Chrome is always going to do it. So I'm never going to hit this. Okay, and the reason that this matters so much, again, is because I need to figure out if Chrome has sent me all the data. Spoiler alert, it has every time because we're sending such small amounts of data, but I still have to check. So what I'm doing is I am getting the request body length, right? So that's the content type or here we are, content length, right? 33. So I'm getting the length and I'm making it like a number, right? So like a JavaScript number. Next, I'm calculating the expected number of bytes that I think I should have, right? So I have the request header length. So I've already stored that, right? So I have my request headers, which have to be ASCII. So each character is 1 byte. Okay, that's great. Now add 4 for my /r/n/r/n plus the request body length. Okay, if I have less than the expected bytes, keep reading because the client is still sending things over. If I have more than the expected bytes, again, 400, I'm upset. Chrome, you've sent over the wrong number. You sent too much data. Chrome never does this, but in theory it could. But if it has exactly the right number of bytes, okay, perfect. We now know that we've gotten a request. It told us it had data and we've gotten all the right number of bytes. JavaScript Terminator, hit the like button to defeat him. That's the only thing. Hit the like button. Good job. Enough, you did it. Okay, so now we can check the method. We say, okay, post to path echo. Right. I called this path echo. So if you look here, these all say echo, 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 echo. Right. That's what's happening there. Okay, great. So if you hit echo, we're going to do the echo thing. If you don't, then probably 404. I'm sure I put that in there. I'm going to get the body data. So I'm splitting again on /r/n. This time I'm getting the second half of it and I'm parsing it out. And then I'm checking all this stuff and I'm making a new response. But this time I'm saying it's application JSON. And when I do that, Chrome is very nice and goes, oh, cool. I'm going to give you this icon because this is JSON. And you can look at the response here. Here it is, application JSON, and the content length is 83 because now this time it's my turn. I'm going to calculate the content length. I'm going to tell it the body response here is 83. So let's look at this response here. Okay, this is the response. Okay, and then can I just grab this whole thing and let me throw this into Vim again. Okay, so let's do this. Boom. All right, and then if I select it, it's going to say that it's not going to say anything. What is it doing? Boop, boop, boop. There we go. 83. So it's 83 bytes, 65 characters, 83 bytes. So I'm actually figuring out what the length of the response that I'm sending back is, right? So I'm saying, there's a nice little helper. I'm not really doing it, right? I'm just saying, here's a string. Tell me what the number of bytes it is, right? And node is so helpful. But let's try something else, okay? So instead of content length, right, I'm going to say content length, okay, +1. Content length +1. So I've added +1. Pretty's gone crazy because of course it has. Where am I? Okay, so I've added +1. Sorry, Prettier went crazy there for a second, but here it is. So now I'm lying about the content length, okay? So now I'm saying it's +1. So I'm going to make another request. So far, every time I've made a request, we've gotten a response. And then we've had like response headers saying, let's show these responses. Here's the content length. Let's make one more request now with the incorrect content length. Okay, here we go. Oh, okay. So look at this. JSON failed. Okay, so we're still saying it's JSON. It's still a 200 okay because I told it, yeah, 200, we're good. But Chrome has failed the request. So it's not going to work here. Probably something in my console. Yep, there we go. A clunky old server's broke. I probably put that code in there somewhere. That's a very funny thing for me to have done. Yeah, there we are. Clunky old server's broke. So I did that. I caught the fetch request and had to do that. So what's happening is Chrome is looking at this and saying the content length is supposed to be longer. Something's gone wrong because I didn't get that. So Chrome is not even going to let me use the data. or said perhaps a little bit more accurately, Chrome's not even going to show me the response. So as the user, I don't get access to it. I don't know if this is going to be visible to you, but it says failed net or content length mismatch. Okay, so now I'm sending the right content length. I'm going to post again, and then this time, okay, it's going to work. Okay, easiest way to support this YouTube channel. First, I want you to shave your head. Okay, like this guy, it's pretty easy. You just follow the arrow, apparently. That's all you have to do. Next, important, I want you to record like a YouTube video of you like coding, okay? Like I just did, but make it way better, okay? Way better. Something people are gonna want and watch. Third, send it to me. Do not upload it to YouTube. Send it to me. I'm gonna upload it to YouTube. I'm gonna get